means that it is in a similar manner to. So before we even get into what's in a similar manner to, well, we're not going to take the time to go back and look, but we have to go back to chapter 2 and see what led up to this. And what we see in chapter 2 is it talking about how we need to be a people of God walking with Him. And then it goes on to talk about how we need to submit to our government and to be subject to our masters. Now, I've talked about some of that not too long ago. I preached a sermon that went into quite a bit of detail on some of that. Here's the point. God is talking about being subject to authorities. He's talking about you need to walk with God, and in so doing, you need to walk under the authority of those around you. Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives. Now let me say this. When it comes to the government and bosses, do you always agree with your bosses and the government? No. Wives, do you always have to agree with your husbands? No. This isn't saying you always have to agree with them. This doesn't even mean that there aren't times you push back against them, because again, in anyone who's been around, sometimes you have to push back against the government and against bosses. Sometimes it's the right thing to do. Wives, sometimes you have to push back against your husbands. God's not saying you don't ever have those situations. God's saying, though, but in a like manner, these are the things you need to do. Be in subjection to your own husbands, that if, now that's an important thing, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversations of the wives. He's talking about the husbands. If they're not obeying the word, you have powerful influence. Proverbs 31, verse 11 and 12 says, the heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. See, folks, the idea here is that if you are a godly woman, you are going to demonstrate that godliness to your spouse, to your husband. You're going to have that. You're going to be a woman of virtue. You're going to be a woman of praise. And your conversation, you're going to do good things in your life. And the more good you do in your life, the more you can influence. I can tell you firsthand, my father isn't an active Christian. My mother is. And she's brought him a long ways. For over 20 years, she's been trying to have a good conversation. And there's a lot of situations out there where the wives are saved and the husbands aren't. But you know how you ruin that? You know how wives, ladies, don't do good. If you're not doing good in front of your husband, he ain't going to come to the Lord. My mother's prayer for years has been that my father would get saved and come to know him and turn his life over to him. For years, that's been her prayer. And the more she draws closer to God, the softer his heart's getting. See how that works? It's not about you just are in subject to him for no reason. There's also part of this process that goes into play. It's not in isolation. You have to have this, ladies, you have to give your husband this room to be able to see what's going on. You have to be able to do that so that he can see the Lord working in your life. And again, these lessons aren't just for husband and wives. These lessons also apply to other people. We have relationships with other people in this world, and you know what? If you don't have a good conversation, if you aren't talking good, you're not going to be able to witness to them. you're not going to be able to be an influence with them and see them to come to know the Lord if you're not walking in the way you should be. And so you ladies need to do good before your husband. Peter goes on to say in 3:2, while they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear. Proverbs 31:26 also continues on with this thought. She opened her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. You see, when you're talking, whether you believe it or not, guys hear you. Guys hear you. They hear your conversations. But here's the thing, they don't necessarily hear them the way you think they do. If you're having conversations that's a bunch of gossip, and you're having conversations that's giving bad advice, and you're having conversations where you're not doing things with your girlfriends or whatnot, or to other family members, and there ain't much Christianity, there's not much wisdom in there, you know what then happens to us guys? We go, well, if you give such bad advice here, why should I listen to you about dumb things, even like taking out the trash? Because you're not good enough over here. I'm not even going to listen to you on the simple things here. See, ladies, you have to be able to show that you are wise. And so the more wisdom you show in these areas, the more you'll be able to then influence your husband and say, hey, husband, I need you to do such and such. Can you help me? And you know what? The more wisdom you show there, the more likely we're to respond positively. It's an interesting dynamic. But God wants you to do the right thing. Because here's the thing. When your communication gets corrupted, it corrupts your relationship. And not just communication with that person, but when you have because here's the thing. As spouses, we get to see all of our spouse, for the most part. We get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we get to hear the conversations they're having. When they think they're having them in private, we oftentimes overhear them, do we not? And you know what? If you're not talking well here, even if it's not at me, I hear what you're saying, and that hurts our relationship. And if it does that here with us on earth, what do you think it does with us in God? That's where this goes back to, but we'll get more into that. So you need to speak with wisdom and have kindness. 1 Peter 3:3 says, whose adorning, let it not be that outward adorning of plaited hair and of wearing of gold or putting on apparel. Philippians 2:3 says, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem other better than themselves. Ladies, can you wear makeup and jewelry and all of that? Yes. Provided you're not doing it to look better than the lady next to you. You know, today, one of the things, we have ladies who are out there decking themselves out a lot. Lots of women are doing all sorts of things with it, trying to do Botox and stuff like that, and trying to make themselves. You know, it's been studied, and most men surveyed, they don't like it. They don't want the thick, heavy makeup. Most men want a more natural look. They don't want all the injections and stuff like that. That's actually not. Do you know why most women do it? For other women. Most women, because here's the thing. Who criticizes you more when you don't look good, ladies? Other women criticize you for it, right? It's not the guys. It's the other ladies who are critical of you when you don't look good. But that goes back to this verse, don't wear it to look good for them. You want to wear something nice? Fine. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with dressing nice and putting on some makeup and all that. I'm not preaching against it. What I'm preaching about is the reason you do it. Are you doing it to take care of yourself? Are you doing it for your spouse? I'll tell you, sometimes my wife and I will get ready to go out on a date or something, and I'll have been just on jeans and a t-shirt and whatnot, and she came off of work and she still looks really nice, professional and everything, and we're going out, and it's like our things are like this in our dress. And then there's been a few times when it's like, well, let's go out for dinner or whatnot, and she's been casual around the house, and she's just in jeans and a t-shirt type thing, and I come in and I pull out my dress shirt and I pull out a jacket and we're going out to dinner, and it's like this. You see, the thing is, though, is we're dressing nice for each other, and that's a good thing. But what the problem is when we're dressing nice to compare each other, because we can do the same exact thing, but it's like, ha ha ha, I look better than you do. I'm a better thing than you are. Sometimes we'll joke about it. We don't mean it, but there are couples out there who do that, who try to make themselves, I'm a better catch. You know, there's a little theory out there that is kind of popular in today's culture, is you have the reacher and settler in a relationship. One of you's a reacher and one of you's a settler. What a horrible, toxic way to look at a relationship. If you think of one of you is better than the other one, you've already set yourself up for failure in your relationship, because that's not what the Bible teaches. Both of you are reachers, because both of you are failures, are terrible people. But somehow you both reach for each other to lift each other up. That's what it's supposed to be. And so we see this thing, don't put on this makeup. If you come to church and you're decked out and everything, that's fine, if you're doing it for the right reasons. I had a grandmother who had grown up in church and everything, and then she fell away. And then every once in a while, periodically, she would go to church. And she would deck herself out really thick. Sorry, Grandma, I'm calling you out on this. She's passed, but she would deck herself out. And I was talking to my mother about it years ago and identified what it was. It was her shield. It was her guardian. It was her protection from the Word. It was to protect herself from having the Lord be able to penetrate into her. It was her armor, spiritual armor in the wrong way, to keep God out, because she was afraid she would get convicted. Because she knew what the love of the Lord was, but she had walked away. She had forgotten it. And so, again, you can wear these nice things. That's fine. But why are you wearing them? What are they to you? Are you happy to not wear them? Would you be okay coming to church and you just be plain Jane you? Because if you're not, there's a problem. Now, that doesn't mean we don't put on Sunday. Believe me, here I am, Sunday best. I'm okay with that. That's not what I'm talking about. Why are you doing what you do? And ladies, your apparel says something about you. And how you wear it and how you present yourself is important in how it affects relationships around it. Because again, we've all been around that woman who is decked out, and you can feel the judgment when she's around those who aren't decked out. She thinks of herself as better simply because you're not dressing to her standards. And we've all, maybe you haven't, but I sure been around that woman. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 4 says, "But let it be the hidden man of the heart, in that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of the meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price." Ephesians 5:33 continues on, says, "Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband." See, back in 1 Peter chapter 4, it talks about the man of the heart in that which is not corruptible. Now, what is that supposed to mean? See, ladies, again, if you look at the world today and problems, and not just today, but the problems that occur in marriage, One of the things that will destroy a marriage is how the wife views her husband. If you ladies look at your husband and you don't think he's hardly anything, you think, oh, gee, I could do better than that. He's not that special of a guy. He's kind of a failure. Why should I respect him in some form or fashion? Your marriage is in trouble. It's going to hurt. What God's saying here is that you need to honor your husband and think of him higher than yourself. You need to look at him as this amazing thing despite his flaws. I can tell you, my wife, at least she says it all the time, she tells me, man, I love it. She'll come to me and she knows my flaws. She knows my faults. We talk about it hey, honey, we need to work on this. Da-da-da. We have this thing going on. Da-da. And then, not a little bit later, I'm so glad I married you. You're such a good guy. I couldn't imagine being married to someone else than you. Why? Because she holds me in high esteem. She respects me. Oh, she also is fully aware of my flaws. But she knows what I am, not because I am that, but because that's how she sees me. And folks, this goes the other way too. Don't think, ladies, all of this applies to that. Guys, you think, oh man, this woman I'm with, oh, she's not that big a deal. I could replace her. What are you thinking? What a horrible thought. It's just terrible to think along those lines. No, you look at this woman and go, how did I get so lucky to marry a woman like this? Oh, is she flawed? Yeah. I can go down the list and tell you all the flaws. I'm not going to. That's not for you to know. But I can go down the list and tell you the flaws of my wife. But I then go, but I am so lucky. Boy, it's amazing. I would rather put up with those flaws than any other woman I've ever met. Because she's an amazing person. And she's everything I need. And she's what I want. And God has put her in this place in my life. See, we need to lift each other up. And we need to look at what's the best about each other. That's why God says this, is ladies, honor and reverence your husband. Because that's what's important with this. Lift this up and just pick each other up in a way that only you two can do. Moving on, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 5 says, for after this manner, in the old time, holy women also who trusted in God adorned themselves, being in subjection to their own husbands, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well, and are not afraid with any amazement. An example of this in practice, of what this verse is talking about, we find in Esther chapter 7, verse 3, and it says, then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. Don't want to get into too deep with it, but Esther went before her husband, the king. And how did she do it? She did it in the most humble, respectful, courteous manner she possibly could. She praised him and lifted him up. She showed him, I am going to do this out of honor, and I'm going to do this even if it ultimately results in my death. Because here's the thing, when Esther went before, had the king not received her, she would have been put to death, by the way. That was the custom. The king had the choice of, yeah, I want to hear what they say, but if they said, nope, I'm not in the mood, the person trying to approach the king, even his wife, would have been put to death. So her coming in was risking the death penalty, depending upon his mood. But she came in humbly, and she showed him all the respect in the world and lifted him up. Ladies, the lesson here is, I'll tell you what, when you have your spouse and your husband, and you come to him humbly, and you come to him under respect and pour your heart out, there's almost nothing he won't do for you, like the king did for Esther. And the same thing goes if you present yourself and just say, honey, I'm asking, can you do this thing for me? Oh, sure. You want a deck built? Oh, consider it done. Oh, you want this? Consider it. Oh, I'll get that for you. Let me see. It might take me a little while, but you honored me with how you came to me. And so I'm going to do that for you. These lessons aren't just for wives, folks. Think about what God says about coming before Him. He wants us to boldly come before Him with our prayers, but what does He want? He wants us to do it humbly, respectfully, correctly. See, all these lessons between husbands and wives are actually lessons for how we're supposed to relate to God. I don't know if you picked that up by now, but it's an important thing for us to look at. God wants us to come before Him, but He wants us to do it in this humble spirit, respecting Him, saying, Lord, what do I need to do to show you the honor you deserve? And now, here's my request. And when we come before the Lord like that, He wants to answer our prayer. He wants to give us the desires of our heart. Because we've demonstrated that we have put Him first, and then He wants to give us what is still in our own heart. Just like any good husband would to their wife. And so we see this dynamic taking place in all of this, so that we can have this relationship. And again, these relationships, principles, go into friendships. If you have a friend and you humbly go before your friend requesting help of something, chances are your friend's going to say, yes, I'll help you. These dynamics aren't limited to this, but they're particularly geared towards husbands and wives. But the lesson still applies to all our relationships, because the truth is the relationships aren't that much different. Not when it comes to the actual relationship nature. And God's trying to teach us that. And so then we come to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, which says, likewise. Here we come to the word likewise again. Now, all those things I just said about the ladies, in a similar manner, men, just like I've told them, now I'm telling you same thing, but, here's some more. He could have just said, likewise, guys, do the same. He could have just said that. He didn't. He says, there's a reason why us men are at the end of this list of the things we're to do. Husbands, because we're the last in that order, because we're the ones who have to do the most. And good. Because we have to do all those things that he just said for the ladies. Those apply to us. And husbands, love your wives. Or likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, as being heirs together in the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Ephesians 5:25 and 26. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. So all of that stuff, guys, we got to do all of that, and we have to dwell with them according to knowledge. We have to give them honor as unto the weaker vessel. Which means, men, let's break that down a little bit. Guys, we need to work to understand our wife. You know, there is volumes of books out there talking about how men struggle to understand women. Guys, I'm going to tell you, you can understand a woman. If she's a godly woman. If she's a godly woman, you can understand her. If she's an ungodly woman, you're helpless. You're not going to understand the ungodly woman. But just the same the other way around. If you're an ungodly man, she's not going to understand you. Because the Bible gives us the basis. If we're trying to be godly, it gives us the basis of understanding each other. It bridges that battle of the sexes that exists. The Bible bridges it if we're trying to apply the Bible. But when we're not, then Lord help us in our relationship. So we dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel. You know, at home, I have 2 plates in my cabinet. One is a cheap 50-cent plastic plate. And I can take that plate and I can drop it on the floor, I can step on it, and then I can pick it up, wash it off, and put it in the dishwasher, no problem. I got another plate in there that's a nice ceramic plate. Can I drop that ceramic plate on the floor? No, it will break. Can I stomp on it? No, it will break. Which one's the more precious one? Which one do I care about more? Do I care about the cheap plastic plate, or do I care about the ceramic plate? If the plastic plate ends up in the garbage, who cares? But when those ceramic plates break, well, that's a big deal. That's a loss in the house. And occasionally some do break. But I need to care for the ladies. Guys, we care for them not because they're weaker, because they're more precious. See, us guys, we can take a beating in the way the ladies can't. Both physically, mentally, and spiritually. We can bear burdens they're not meant to bear. That's why there's this additional instruction at the end that isn't there for the ladies quite the same. Ladies, sorry to break it to you, you don't want to be a man. I never will understand the transgender stuff going on today, because here's the thing. Ladies, being a man is terrible. You are not equipped to be a man. But the vice versa is true. Being a lady, that's terrible too, in a whole different way. I would never wish the curse of being a woman on any man. I would never wish the curse of a man on any woman. Because we are cursed. Let's keep that in mind. And so again, just a little tangent on that. The transgender stuff, you have this curse, and now you're trying to adopt the other curse, but you don't lose the previous curse. Now you're bearing both curses. No wonder the suicide rate amongst transgender is sky high. They claim it's from all this. No, it's because of the burden of the curse. Because they're trying to adopt the curse in their life that isn't theirs to adopt, isn't theirs to bear. Sorry, that's my take. Got to go on that tangent for a second. But when we come back to this, we need to give honor to our wife. Because here's the thing. Our wife is our helpmeet. We're heirs together, is what it said. This person is the person that we go through life with. At least it's supposed to be. We're supposed to take them seriously and treat them as important parts of our life. God doesn't want you to be this dictator over your wife. He wants you to be a loving leader to your wife, just like he is to us. How does Christ treat us? Does he come in and dictate terms to us? No. He says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. If you love me. Well, we can apply that to our wives. Ladies, if you love your husband, you'll keep his instruction. You'll submit to him. You'll follow him. Not because he's perfect, but because he's being godly. He's trying to be the man of God. Now, if he ain't being godly, that changes some of these equations. That changes some of these dynamics, admittedly. But that doesn't give us the right to do wrong by them, even if they're not a godly person. And guys, you have a wife. Well, she's not a Christian. So what? Does that change how you're supposed to love her? Think about it for a second. How does Christ love non-Christians? Does he love them different than he loves Christians? Depending upon how you look at it, but the truth is, he loves them just the same and wants the same for them. He wants them to become Christians. Just like, guys, if we have a wife who doesn't love us back, we need to want her to love us back. We need to work to get her love. Just like Christ is working in our lives to get our love, we do the same with them. So we have this dynamic at going on amongst us as Christians to have these relationships in our life. 1 Peter 3:8 continues on. Finally, be ye all of one mind, having compassion one of another, love as brethren, be pitiful, be courteous, not rendering evil for evil or railing for railing, but contrariwise blessing, knowing that ye are thereunto called, that ye should inherit a blessing. Ephesians 4:31 and 32 continues on, says, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice, and be kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. Husbands and wives, be of one mind. God calls you to be unified in spirit, to be a godly couple. I don't know how many of you caught it a few verses back, but he said, do these things that your prayers be not hindered. Do you realize that your relationship with your spouse is so important to God that if you're not right with your spouse, you're not right with God? That's how important it is. God is not going to hear your prayers the way he should be if you're not right with your spouse. Do you see that? That's how important. That's why God says be of one mind, be unified. Does that mean be perfect? Of course we can't be perfect, but we can try. We strive together. That's why in a proper godly marriage, the whole point is we build each other up and not tear each other down. That's why it's so important to respect one another and to love one another, is because that's how we build each other up. Ladies, you say, well, my husband's not worthy of that respect. Doesn't matter, because if you don't show it to him, he won't grow. Guys, my wife, well, I can't love her because she does all these terrible things. You know what? Don't care, because if you don't love her, she won't grow. See, these aren't instructions for us to be able to look at the spouse and say, you're supposed to. You have to do this. See, the Bible tells you, you need to do this to me. That's not what the Bible's saying here. It's saying, what are you supposed to do regardless of what they do? Is your spouse a good Christian following the Lord? God doesn't care if they are. He cares whether or not you're doing right. You don't get to justify wrong because your spouse is wrong. And the only way you can be right with him is to say, you know what? I forgive you. I forgive you of those things you did wrong to me. Because here, I'll tell you what, if you keep score in a marriage and you track the things you do wrong, your marriage is doomed. Because I can tell you without any doubt in my mind, every marriage, if you tracked the things the spouses do to each other, you would be in a competition that would never see an end. And it would not be a good thing. The only way, one of the great pieces of advice my wife and I had before we got married, don't keep score. Don't keep score. Forgive one another. Grow past it. Get over it. Reconcile with one another. Because here's the thing. Your marriage is a picture of you and Christ. If you can't do that with the person on this earth you're supposed to love the most, how in the world can you do that with God? How in the world can you have a healthy, loving relationship with God if you can't have a healthy, loving relationship with the person He gave you? That's what this is about. This isn't just about you having a marriage that's strong. It's about you having a relationship with God that's strong. And that's what we need to understand. That's what we need to come back to. That's what we need to cling to in our relationships. Our relationships aren't a reflection of each other and the things we do right or wrong with each other. Our relationships with each other are a reflection of what God's done for us. And we need to bring that not just in the relationships with our husbands and wives, but in the relationships we have with each other. Because I can tell you, if we sat here, we can all point some fingers at some things we've done wrong to one another. Maybe not the people in this room directly, but you know what? We all have people who we can say, oh, they did me wrong there. So what? You going to keep score? You going to hold that against them? Or are you going to forgive them? Are you going to grow past it? Because that's what Christ did for us. Let's never forget John 3:16 through 18. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God sent not His Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved. He that believeth on Him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. Do you so love your spouse that you would sacrifice yourself for each other? The Bible says, greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his brother. Would you lay down your life for your spouse the way Christ laid down His life for you? The answer should be yes. But this is a time of reflection. Are you there? Yeah, Pastor, this is all well and good, but I'm single. I don't have a spouse. All right, terrific. Does that mean you have no relationships in your life whatsoever? Again, there's more relationships in your life than just a spouse. And all of these principles likewise apply to others too. That's why we have words like likewise in the Bible to say, okay, I'm giving you a principle here about this, but it's not just for this. It's more than this. Likewise, treat the world the way you want to be treated. Likewise, reach out and have a relationship with those around you. Likewise, give your life over and think others more highly than yourself. Sacrifice yourself for others for their benefit. Because I'll tell you what, the greatest relationships always are the ones where the two people in them think the other one's the better person. When you have a relationship where the two people think the other person's the better person, you always have a good relationship in that dynamic. Because they build each other up. And they strive to bring each other up. It's when you think you're better than the other person, you're actually tearing them down, believe it or not.